Hey, welcome once again to the Psychic Spectrum Radio Show. This is Skip.
And Sharon, the princess of chocolate, sprinkles, and everything sweet.
And together we are the Psychic Spectrum.
We are.
We are. And we have a guest today that we are just thrilled to have. His name is Benjamin Radford. He is with the Skeptical Inquirer. He is many introductory things that I can say about him, and we'll get into that in a moment. But we want to welcome you to today's show. Together, we would hope to bring information to people as what we are all about. And we always, our motto is, my motto anyhow, if I can say one thing or show you one thing that blows your dress up, then that makes everybody happy. So
that's his motto.
And Sharon has some shout outs she wants to do today.
I got some stuff I want to say.
All right, let it go.
Today is an 8 day, so that's all about balancing abundance and spirituality. So make it a fun day, whatever you do.
All right.
Don't be afraid to if you want something, to go buy it, because you do deserve it. Also, what about those Seahawks?
Yeah.
Was that cool or what?
An incredible game.
That was a good game. And Mercury is still retrograde, so I'm hoping everybody is doing quite well with that process. I mean, it's amplified according to my astrologer, Doug. So it's going to be a rough ride, so buckle your seatbelts and get ready for the rest of the time. I believe it's November 20th or 21st. It goes direct.
21st.
Yeah, so at least it'll get done right before Thanksgiving, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and my shout-outs. I want to say hi to Patty, Sylvia, Winter Ray, Ann in Hawaii, Charlie, Charles, Linda, and Nancy, and all my podcast and archive people and all the people that come on our showcase on Wednesday night. I call them my peeps. I love you all.
That's right. This is good. We're moving along fast today. So let's do this. Let's cut to our commercials that we're going to show here for a couple of commercials, our sponsors, and get right back with our guest, Benjamin Radford. This is the Psychic Spectrum Radio Show on 1150 AM KKNW, and we will return in just a moment.
Ginger's Pet Rescue is one of the largest nonprofit pet rescue organizations in Washington state, specializing in saving death row dogs. As of this airing, Ginger's Pet Rescue has saved well over 17,000 dogs. Go to the website and find an adoption event near you. You can also volunteer to help at events, or you can foster a dog until they can be adopted. Ginger's Pet Rescue is a 501c3 nonprofit organization and accepts your tax-deductible donations. The website again is gingerspetrescue.org.
Are you looking for a new home? Is it time to move? To get what you want in today's fast-paced real estate market, you need Ron Blood of Berkshire Hathaway. With decades of experience, he offers you the personalized service you need and deserve when shopping for a new home. Ron Blood is a real estate agent, and he has his finger on the pulse of Pacific Northwest real estate market. From Vancouver to Blaine and from Wenatchee to Gig Harbor, Ron Blood will work tirelessly and get you into the ideal home that fits your needs, your budget, and your dreams. And if you haven't been pre-qualified yet, Ron will help you get pre-qualified so you have a distinct advantage over other buyers. Ron Blood will help make your offer stand out. Whether you're looking for a place to raise your family, find your dream home, or even downsize so you can settle in for retirement, Ron Blood of Berkshire Hathaway is there to help you find it. Contact Ron Blood of Berkshire Hathaway at 206-660-2884. That's 206-660-2884. He's also on Facebook. Just look for Ron Blood of Berkshire Hathaway Home Services.
Alternative Talk 1150.
All right, welcome back to the Psychic Spectrum Radio Show with Skip and Sharon. And we have a guest today named Benjamin Radford from the Skeptical Inquirer.
And I've been talking with him off air, and he is a delight. I love his voice.
Yes. And I've got to do this. I know this is a no-no on radio to do this long or this much, but I am going to do it.
Why do you always do that?
Because I have to qualify this in people's minds. We are an alternative talk radio station.
Yes.
And you and I are psychics and mediums, and we've done this we've been married for 45 years in about 22 days.
Yeah.
And Our guest today is Benjamin Radford. He is the Deputy Director of the Skeptical Inquirer Science Magazine. He's also a research fellow with a nonprofit educational organization, which is the Committee for Skeptical Inquiry. Now, I got to admit, I am reading this from your website, Benjamin, because you and I and Sharon have never met. We've never talked. And I know a little bit about you. Like we said during the break, we've watched you on TV and
Don't say we. I don't.
other. Oh, you were there.
Was I there?
Yeah, but you
Was
also
I there? Was I really there?
you graduated magna cum laude with a bachelor's degree in psychology from the University of New Mexico. You have a master's degree in education from the University of Buffalo. Member of Phi Beta Kappa Society, the American Folklore Society, the International Society for Contemporary Legend Research, among many other things. You've written thousands of articles. I know you've written at least 12 books. I think you have more than that, don't you? Benjamin, did we lose you? Hello?
Yes.
Oh, there we are. We're back with you. You've written more than 12 books, haven't you?
Yeah, I think it's up to 13 now, but I can't keep up on my website. So.
Yeah.
My gosh, I am humbled already.
Oh, yeah. And you've also worked as a columnist for Live Science Magazine, Discovery News, Skeptical Inquirer Magazine, and the Skeptical Briefs newsletters. You've created a board game called Playing Gods. It's the board game of divine domination.
Oh, wow.
And you've made 2 short films. You're one of the few world's science-based paranormal investigators. And you've done firsthand research into mysterious phenomena in 16 countries and 4 continents.
I think when you said that, I do remember this wonderful gentleman.
And he's been on Good Morning America, the Travel Channel, Destination Unknown, Discovery Channel, History Channel, the National Geographic Channel. I mean, I could go on and like almost every major CBC, BBC, CNN. I mean, I could go on and on.
I still want your autograph.
Yeah. That'd be awesome. But
it's exhausting just hearing you describe me.
I was going to say, my goodness. But, and you're only 20, right?
Yeah.
Something like that, yeah.
And see, now you understand why I wanted to read all this, to tell everybody this man is probably the most qualified,
I would think so,
to talk on the subjects that he does.
Which is?
The investigating the paranormal.
Wow.
And the metaphysical.
I'm impressed.
I mean, one thing that I got to ask, I'll go back to the beginning. I have so many questions. Tell us how you got into this in the first place.
Well, I got into it basically by being a curious teenager. I grew up here in New Mexico, where I am now, and when I was growing up in my early teens, I would see these TV shows. This was in the 70s and 80s. Seeing TV shows and books and magazines, and there are all sorts of amazing stories. You know, there are stories about the Bermuda Triangle and Bigfoot and UFOs, and Uri Geller was, of course, really big at the time.
Oh,
yeah. And all these sorts of things. And as a teenager, I was just fascinated by these stories because they're just so interesting, and on TV, and Arthur C. Clarke's Mysterious America, Mysterious Universe, and all these. And so I remember very clearly. I would during the summertime, I would go and take my allowance money from doing the chores, and I'd go to a local used bookstore, and I'd plunk down a couple dollars and walk home with a bunch of books. And I was just fascinated by all the weird mysterious things going on in the world. And I would buy books on, for example, I remember one time I bought books on Viking runes. And there was this really interesting book, is illustrated about, this Viking rune means this, and this Viking rune means this, and they started talking about the tarot and things like that. And so I started reading about these things, and I was just fascinated by them, and I even made my own runes. I remember going to there's a clay pottery place nearby, and I bought 5 pounds of clay or something, and I made these little runes in my bag. And I would carve them into them with a little butter knife. Mm-hmm. And I was reading the instructions, and then after a while, I was thinking to myself, well, how does this writer know this? Because it would say, for example, well, you cast these runes, you put it in a bag, and you pull some out, and you put them in front of you, and depending on the direction and this and that, and it was all very well explained. But I said, well, hold on. I mean, I'm not saying that's not right, but how do I know that's right? I mean, what if the writer got it wrong? Where did they get their information? Did somebody test this? Where is it just they say it is said that,
Right.
or and so I started questioning not so much the legitimacy of these things, but just sort of trying to understand how would we know this, right? And so I began sort of taking a more questioning attitude throughout my teen years and going into college and getting a degree in psychology and these sorts of things, and trying to explore the mysteries around us, ranging everything from ghosts to psychic detectives to monsters and things like that,
Mm-hmm.
but through a distinctly science-based lens, and trying to say, okay, well, there are lots of mysterious or unexplained things that are out there that people believe in, and then the question is, well, are they real? And just because lots of people believe in it doesn't mean that it's necessarily real. It doesn't mean it's not real, but it just means that just because a lot of people believe something doesn't make it so. And of course, we see this all the time,
Yeah.
in the radio and the media. So that's what sort of got me interested in trying to examine these mysteries from a science-based perspective, and sort of bringing an empirical approach to it and saying, okay, what is the evidence for this? And so I didn't go into trying to debunk or disprove, and I didn't go into trying to prove it either. I just went into it saying, hey, this is interesting. This is apparently unexplained.
Mm-hmm.
What is the evidence for this in terms of the science? And and trying to parse out truth from fiction, things like that. So that's basically what got me into it.
Well, that's interesting, because when we got into the metaphysical after my near-death experience on my motorcycle accident, I still remain a skeptic, and
Mm-hmm.
I want to see proof. We've had people over the decades, come to us and make all kinds of claims. We've had people say, oh, I can cure cancer. And I say, good. Show me the doctor reports before, show me the person, and show me the reports after, and then we'll talk.
Right.
And I want to see evidence of it. And one of the things that we do, well, two of the things we do a psychic showcase every Wednesday here in Fife. It's a little town between Seattle and Tacoma. And we have a panel of psychics and astrologers, and everybody gets a free reading, but we bring in a speaker every week to talk
Generally.
to them and talk about their specialty, or what they know, what they've done, what their practice is.
Mm-hmm.
And we've had a lot of people come on there that just make claims and they speak, but we've had a lot of people come on and they show you how they do what they do. And there's still a lot of it's where it's left up to the individual in the audience to make up their own mind. But it's like I said, if we show you one thing that helps, then we've done our job. You know, and so I think skepticism is a good thing, and we practice it in everything that we do. And I have to say, we're really proud of our reputation, that we make sure that we don't present people who get up there and say, I have a third eye I can blink it when I want to.
We try our best.
Right.
Yeah, we try our best, yeah.
There's been 2 that got through my radar.
Yeah. But
they didn't last long.
I like the fact that you approach this from a science-based, which is an actual, in my layman's terms, a physical way to look at something,
Mm-hmm.
and prove, disprove, or, I don't know, justify some things. Now, one of the things that I read on your website here was solving the mysteries of the Santa Fe courthouse ghost in 2007. So can you tell us a little bit about that and how you did it?
Oh, sure. That's actually one of my most famous investigations. Actually, yeah, it was a fun story. So basically, what happened was that it was in 2007, in mid-June actually, and it was here in New Mexico. So I live in Albuquerque, which is probably most famous for Breaking Bad and Bugs Bunny. Left-hand turn in Albuquerque.
Mm-hmm.
But Santa Fe is the capital of the state, and it's about an hour north of here. And it was at a courthouse in Santa Fe, which is I think it's the oldest capital in the Southwest.
Oh.
And there was a camera pointed at the First Judicial District Courthouse. And I didn't really hear about it until a reporter from the Santa Fe, New Mexican, contacted me and said, "Hey, there's this weird story going around. What do you think about it?" And I was like, "Well, I never even heard about it." So he sent me a link, and it's this crazy thing. So there was a deputy named Alfred Arana who was looking at the surveillance footage outside the judicial complex. And saw this weird glowing thing that many people interpreted as a ghost. And so the reporter asked me, he said, "Well, you do investigations?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, what do you think it is?" And I said, "Well, I don't know." It was at the time, I looked at on YouTube, I think there was like 100,000 views or something. So it was just blowing up. Everybody and their cousin, had some opinion on it. And so I said, "Okay, well, let me give it a shot. It's basically in my backyard." And so I watched the video a couple times, and it's unfortunate that we're sort of we're on radio and voice instead of visual, because I could show it to you, but you can find it online. It's not hard to find. But there were all sorts of different theories on it. Some people thought it was a hoax. Some people thought that somebody had shined a light on this one camera for unknown reasons. I mean, it happened at 7:50 in the morning, and it was, there's no reason why anybody would try and shine a light at a camera outside a courthouse. I mean, that didn't really make sense. So other people thought it was some sort of bug or insect. Some people thought the main explanation was, of course, that it was a ghost. So there were theories that maybe it was the ghost of somebody who had been killed there, like maybe there was a shootout at the courthouse or something. Mm-hmm. Other people said that maybe it was an Indian burial ground, which is, of course, a long-standing trope. And of course, it's always, and I'm always slightly amused when I hear that, because basically all of North America is a Native American burial ground. Point to me somewhere where somebody didn't die, whether it was 50 years ago or 200 years ago. That's kind of a non-starter there. So anyway, long story short, I watched the video, and I had a couple of hypotheses. So when I begin investigating a case, the first thing I do is when possible, interview witnesses and look at the evidence. And in this case, of course, we had a videotape. It wasn't just, somebody said they saw something, 3 years ago, and who knows.
Not just hearsay.
Exactly. So here we actually had something that could be independently verified. So I could verify that something was there. The question wasn't, is there some weird glowing thing on the camera? Because of course there is. The question is, what is that weird glowing thing on the camera? So I'll spare you all the details. So basically, I had narrowed it down to 3 or 4 likely things. One was cottonwood fluff. There are a lot of cottonwood trees out here, and even that time of year, often they will float in the air. And when you see them just out in the parks or something, they're pretty obviously just floating cottonwood. But if you saw it on a camera at a certain angle with light catching it, it might look unusual. Another possibility was that it was some sort of bug or insect crawling on the lens, and I had investigated a couple of cases where that was what the answer turned out to be, that it wasn't a ghost, it was an insect on the lens. Mm-hmm. And there were a couple other ones, and of course, one possibility is that it could be a ghost. And so, but as an investigator, I have to take the most likely ones first and then sort of work my way down. And if I can rule out the most likely ones, then, as I think Sherlock Holmes said, that, once you've ruled out all the other explanations, what you're left with it has to be it. So I did some experiments. So I drove up there, and I had to go around the same time, because you can't just go. Again, the original.
Yeah.
You can't just go. I couldn't wait 2 weeks, or when it's warmer.
Right.
It had happened just a couple days earlier, and so I couldn't. I had to be there at 7:50 in the morning to try and duplicate that. So I did a couple experiments. Again, I'll spare you all the details. It is mentioned. You can find articles online about it, but I ended up discovering that it was, in fact, after all the hoopla, it was a spider or insect that had crawled on the lens, and it looked really weird because the sunlight was catching it at this odd angle, and it also was a bit removed from the camera lens. So this is the main reason why so many people said that it couldn't be an insect. They said, well, okay, well, if you have a camera and you put a bug on it or anything small, you get this dark, weird-looking thing, but it doesn't look like what was recorded on the film. Mm-hmm. And the answer was, what I figured out was that the surveillance camera was actually housed in an outer casing.
Oh yeah.
And so the bug wasn't walking along the lens of the camera. The bug was walking on the lens of the outer casing.
Yeah.
And so that inch or two of separation made an otherwise ordinary spider look like a ghost.
Ah, very interesting.
You know, that happens a lot, even on our ghost hunts. Bugs can look like stuff, you know, and we look at them and go, no, that's a bug. You know, yeah, I can though. It's really weird how they come across with a glow, you know.
Yeah, and especially, you know, a lot of times one of the most important things, and this sort of goes back to psychology, is it's what you're psychologically primed for, right? And so you're expecting to see it. So this is why, you know, if you're in a haunted hotel or bed and breakfast or whatever else, and something weird happens, and you're thinking about ghosts, then you're going to say, "Oh, that must be the ghost."
That is something you have to fight with every time you're in that kind of situation. You're right.
Well, and the ironic thing is that, and I've seen this happen firsthand, is that in other contexts we wouldn't think of anything about it. So, for example, you know, there's been times, and we've all had times when all of a sudden we're just not feeling well, or we forgot to eat, or we just suddenly get a headache. I mean, these are common, ordinary things. It might happen while you're at work, or while you're at the supermarket, or whatever else, or while you're commuting in traffic. Yeah. And if it happens during these mundane circumstances, you just shrug it off. It's, oh, whatever, you know, I forgot to eat, or you know, whatever else. So you don't think anything about it. But if that exact same thing happens at a haunted hotel, then, oh, it's the ghost. It's like, well, maybe not.
Yeah. I mean, I can see that side of it. Yeah. But there is another side that, you know, that we actually have had.
Yeah,
if somebody knocks a flashlight out of my hand when there's nobody there and I felt it,
right? Then
that's different.
You know, there's something there that's messing with you.
Yeah,
that's true.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, or walks through you like it did me, but that's weird.
Tell me, I want to talk about another case that you have solved, and it's kind of famous. I looked both of these up on the internet, by the way, and I watched these. But the Hispanic vampire El Chupacabra in 2010. This thing has been talked about, and people have seen it. They speculated that was what it was. It was a chupacabra, and so on and so forth. I think it's a mangy dog or something like that myself. But tell us about that. What you did that? It was in 2010.
I think it's the Tasmanian devil.
Tasmanian devil.
Tasmanian devil. Going back to the Warner Brother cartoons.
Yeah.
The chupacabra, that's probably my best known investigation. And as you mentioned, I did a book on it in 2010 titled Tracking the Chupacabra, the Vampire Beast in Fact Fiction Folklore.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, the origin of that goes back to, as I mentioned earlier, my teenage interest in monsters and weird things, broadly speaking. Yeah. So, you know, I grew up hearing stories about, you know, the Loch Ness Monster and Bigfoot and this and that. And I had done a couple investigations. In fact, one of my books is titled Lake Monster Mysteries. So I did a book with my co-author, Joe Nickel, on lake monsters around the world, in fact. And then finally someone said, well, what about the chupacabra? I mean, it's basically in my own backyard, and I speak Spanish, and so there was a couple of chupacabra sightings here in New Mexico, and so I began looking into it. And for those who don't know, basically chupacabra means goat sucker in Spanish.
Oh.
And it's said to be a vampire. Yeah. And so It's said to be this weird, mysterious creature. It takes different forms, and as Skip mentioned, that one of the most common forms is basically a mangy dog.
Yeah.
But the earlier version, the original version of the chupacabra is much different, and I'll talk about that in a second. But basically, it's this creature that many people in Latin America believe in Costa Rica, in Nicaragua, and Mexico, Puerto Rico, and so on, and others around the world, but primarily in Spanish-speaking areas.
Mm-hmm.
And again, the idea is that this creature sucks blood, so it's literally a vampire, and it attacks mostly livestock. So we're talking chickens and goats and cattle and things like that. So I was intrigued by this creature because, well, for a couple of reasons. One is that, as I mentioned, it's a vampire, and so vampires are interesting.
Yeah, I agree.
So that was inherently interesting. And the other part was that, unlike Bigfoot, for example, which just leaves behind, say, footprints or ambiguous sightings overall. If the chupacabra is real and it's sucking the blood out of chickens and goats and these animals, then there should be hard evidence, right? There should be.
Yes.
We should be finding dead chickens and goats that have had their blood sucked out of them mysteriously, and the only answer is some weird chupacabra animal. So that was part of what intrigued me about it, was that if this is real, if these sightings are actually of actual animals and this and that, then there should be the hard evidence. And so that sort of launched me onto about a 5-year investigation. So I interviewed original witnesses. I talked to a woman out in Texas named Phyllis Canyon who calls herself the Chupacabra Lady.
Mm-hmm.
That's just, she calls herself that. I'm not me. That's not me being mean. And she said that because she found what she believes is a chupacabra outside her ranch in Cuero, Texas.
Oh, yes. I think I saw a documentary on her.
What was her last name?
Canyon, Canion.
She actually has it stuffed or something.
Yeah. She's this little spark plug of a woman.
Yes.
She's about 4 feet tall. She got blonde hair. She wears a red visor.
Yep.
Yeah, that's we've seen that.
Yeah, I remember seeing that.
Yeah. So I met her. I was actually out there for a TV show called Monster Quest.
Mm.
So I met her and I saw her chupacabra, or what she thought was a chupacabra.
What she calls, yeah.
And it later turned out to be a coyote. But well, she disputes that. Even though they did DNA tests and it's clearly a coyote, she's like, well. And I'm trying to be nice to her. I'm like, Phyllis, I know that you stake your reputation on this being a chupacabra, but the DNA says it's a coyote. And she says, well, okay, well then maybe she said, okay, she finally admitted that it was a coyote, but she said it's also chupacabra.
Well, didn't she say there was like some distance in the neck area that was not like a coyote or something? I mean, she had some dimensions on stuff.
Yeah, she tried. Yeah, she said a couple things. She was trying to make the argument that that the animal wasn't a coyote, even though of course the DNA shows it, and it's clearly a canid. So a canid it's a dog or coyote, fox, things like that. So it's part of the answer is that when these animals are afflicted with what's a disease called sarcoptic mange, it's caused by skin mites and it causes the hair to fall out.
Yes.
I was right.
Yeah,
you were right. Of course, you were right. But one of the other side effects isn't just the hair falling out, although that's the most obvious one. But it has other effects as well. So, for example, sometimes it tightens the skin around the face, and it makes the mouth look bigger.
Oh.
And things like that, and it gives the skin a sort of a gray cast and things like that. So, anyway, I did a whole book on it. Again, it's like a 300-page book. I can't describe everything, but basically, so again, I interviewed eyewitnesses. I traveled down to the jungles of Nicaragua and Costa Rica, looking for any populations down there, and I ended up going to Puerto Rico and interviewing the original eyewitness, the very first person that ever saw a chupacabra.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was really interesting, and it was this woman named Madeline, and I met her in San Juan, Puerto Rico, and she was the very first person ever to see chupacabra. And I had her sighting was years back, but I went back and interviewed her, and it was interesting. I mean, she said her sighting was back in 1995. And I talked to her, and as it turned out, she had probably mistaken the chupacabra for a monster that she saw in a science fiction film.
Oh, like the Wolfman or something, huh?
Well, it was a film called Species.
Ah.
I remember that. Yeah.
It had Michael Madsen in it, and Ben Kingsley, and Natasha Henstridge, a tall, attractive Canadian model. And in her human form, it was this beautiful blonde, but in the monster form, it was this spiky-backed alien-type creature, which is virtually identical to what Madeline described in 1995. And as it happens, it's not a coincidence, but as it happens, the movie that she saw that has this chupacabra-like creature in it, she saw that movie just about a week or two after, or a week or two before her sighting. So it was very clearly influenced by the sighting. So that in a nutshell, I mean, again, there's lots of different angles into it, but that's basically what happened. So I talked to original witnesses, I talked to scientists, I talked to wildlife predation experts, talked to medical forensics people who talked about, for example, if you have an animal that was attacked by a dog or coyote, they will go for the throat. And this is what happens in ordinary predation. So if there's wild dogs or coyotes, they don't bite the arms, they don't bite the stomach, they go for the throat. And what that often does is it leaves a very mysterious looking set of puncture marks, vampire-like, if you will, right on the jugular vein. This can seem very mysterious to people because there's no other external damage. So somebody in Texas, for example, or in Mexico or somewhere else, will come upon this dead animal that's not torn apart. There's not blood everywhere. It would almost seem like it's sleeping, but it's obviously dead. And the only marks that are visible from the outside are two puncture marks on the neck. And of course, everybody immediately thinks vampire.
Right.
But what they're missing, and what you know when you talk to medical pathologists and wildlife experts, is that what happens is that because they bite the neck, the animal dies from internal bleeding. So they're basically hemorrhaging on the inside, and that's how they die.
Oh,
and so it's not that the blood is lost. It's not that the blood has been extracted by chupacabra or anything else. It's just that the animal died without bleeding out and died from internal bleeding, and the blood is still in the body, but it's been coagulated, and you would actually have to cut it open to find it. So this sort of leads people to the mistaken assumption that some vampire, specifically the chupacabra, has attacked it.
Makes total sense.
But hasn't that rumor been around even before this lady? I mean,
that is an excellent question. That is a brilliant question. Thank you.
You're welcome.
You raise an interesting question. So here's the thing. So when I've told people about my chupacabra research, and again, you can read it in my book and elsewhere, I've had people say to me, well, that's all interesting and everything, but I heard about the chupacabra in the 1970s.
Yeah.
Or I heard about the chupacabra in the 1980s or else. And here's the problem. The problem is that when I've asked people for evidence of that, when I've said, that's interesting, show me, they can't come up with anything. And so I actually have a reward. I've actually this has been such an issue, and again, I'm not defensive about it. I'd love to find information showing that I'm wrong about this. But I've had probably, I'm going to say, a dozen people in the last few years who have politely, sometimes not politely, but usually politely, said, well, your research is pretty good, but I think you're wrong about this because, I heard about chupacabra, back in somewhere else. And I've always said, okay, I'm not saying you're wrong. All I'm saying is prove it. And by prove it, I mean show me a published reference. It can't just be, I remember hearing my grandfather
Yeah,
say
right.
something.
Right.
I can't do anything with that. So show me a published reference in a magazine, in a newspaper, in a folklore journal, anyway, in a diary. I don't care. Just somebody that uses the word chupacabra to describe a vampire beast that's lurking around attacking animals.
Mm-hmm.
And the reward last time I offered the reward, it was $500, and the reward still stands. And if someone can, again, it can't just be, I remember hearing, or they say. It has to be a published reference that I can actually independently verify.
I got one more question.
Yeah.
Since we know it's a coyote, and coyotes are everywhere, have we ever found anything that looks like what they're saying is a chupacabra in the Northwest or any other part besides down by Mexico and Argentina and all that stuff?
Well, here's the thing. So many of the chupacabras are coyotes, but not all of them are.
Oh.
And so, so what's happened is that the public's idea of what a chupacabra is has greatly expanded over the years. So, as I mentioned, originally in 1995 and 96, after the first reports came out, the chupacabra looked like the monster in the movie Species. It was bipedal. It looked like a small human. It had spikes on its back, had large eyes, things like that. So if you watch the movie Species, that's what the original chupacabra descriptions looked like. And then it changed in 2000. In 2000, this was the first time when the dead dog type things, the canids, right? So there was a rancher in Nicaragua by the name of Jorge Talavera, and he found this dead dog on his property in Managua, Nicaragua, and he believed that it had attacked his cattle. And this was the first time that somebody ever said, "Oh, here's this dead mangy dog coyote thing, and it's the chupacabra." But what's happened over the years since then is that because it's such a well-known thing, is that people now call any dead animal that's weird or any dead thing they can't immediately identify a chupacabra. So I've seen opossums called chupacabra. I've seen all sorts of different things. So it's a lot of them are these canid animals, but basically anything weird these days is going to be called a chupacabra. And so so that's one of the parts about it is that again there's been this gradual expanding of what people think the chupacabra is.
I see. Okay.
Some of them are raccoons. I mean, I've had people send me photos of raccoons saying it's a chupacabra.
Okay.
Okay. Well, are there any cases you've investigated that you weren't able to explain or left you with the impression that there might be something to them or they were real or however you want to say it, or that they just simply can't disprove or prove it? Like,
Maybe
let's say a ghost,
Mothman.
a ghost sighting, the Mothman, yeah, or anything metaphysical, paranormal.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. There's a couple answers to it. One of them is, I've definitely had. There's, in a lot of these stories and legends, and I'm not saying that they're all legends, but just in many of the cases, there are legends incorporated in them. There's a grain of truth to them. There's not always, so it's a mistake to say there's always a truth to it, because there isn't always, but there often is. And I'll give you one example. So I was in Newfoundland about 5-10 years ago, and I was investigating. Actually, I was investigating giant squid because Newfoundland is one of the places, along with New Zealand, oddly enough, where giant squid wash up on the shores, and they're often mistaken for sea monsters.
Oh, yeah.
And while I was there, I was investigating a lake monster named Cressy in Lake Crescent.
I remember that.
that it's a beautiful little place. I love Newfoundland. It was just a adorable place. The accents were incomprehensible, but the cod was excellent. And once you get past the frigid wind, it's beautiful. But anyway, so I drove up to the place, and I'd heard about this lake monster. It's not real well known, but it's the main one in Newfoundland.
Mm-hmm.
And I interviewed some people there, some local residents, who talked to me about their sightings. And many of them weren't really the sort of stereotypical head and neck coming out of the lake type thing. They're more sort of like laying flat on the water and sort of dark and maybe black.
Right.
And a lot of descriptions, frankly, resembled eels. And not all of them did, but many of them did. And so at one point I talked to the guy there. I said, well, are there any eels in the lake? He's like, oh, yeah, there's big eels. There's lots and lots of big eels. And I said, well, is it possible that, Cressy the lake monster is a big eel? He's like, oh, yeah, that's possible. I'm like, well, okay. I mean, I'm not saying that it solves everything, but I mean, it's a lot of the explosives were eel-like. So that's one example of where, you'd have to drain the whole lake, which is impractical to know definitively that nothing's there. But the most likely explanation, the scientific one, is that the people are most likely seeing eels.
Right.
But in other cases, I would say probably, the thing that I think there's probably most likely to be some truth to it would be intuition.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I'm speaking from a psychology background and point of view. So by intuition, I don't necessarily mean psychic powers. I don't necessarily mean precognition. I don't necessarily mean remote viewing. I just mean the ordinary sense of where we sometimes know something without knowing how we know it.
Right. Right.
And again, this is fact-based in psychology. So I mean, this is you and I can disagree about whether there's good hard evidence for telekinesis or psychic mediums or whatever else. But this is clearly the case. And so there are cases in which we can know something without knowing how we know it, and it's ordinary cues. It's we see things all around us. We don't always pay attention to them. And so there are times when we can get a sense about something or get a sense about somebody. And they didn't explicitly tell us, but we picked it up from something they said subconsciously or their body language or something else. Mm-hmm. And it can seem very mysterious and intuitive. So that would probably be, of all the things I've investigated, I think there's probably the good evidence for intuition, but again, not necessarily the sort of ESP, but something much more subtle.
Right. And yes. Now, you've written, like you said, you're up to 13 books now. But one of your books.
No, I just finished a book while we were talking. Okay, we're on 14.
Oh, okay. One of your books was called "How to Solve Unexplained Mysteries." Now, I read a little bit about that, and it seems like a very good book. So, if people out there listening, you should check out the books that Benjamin has written. And I want you to know, Benjamin, we stopped all the commercials for the rest of the show so we could continue this talk uninterrupted. So I wanted to give as much information about your research and your findings as we could in this short time, especially on a couple of landmark cases, I guess we could call them. But now, I'm going to try and take advantage of you.
Oh, that's okay. You're not the first person.
Okay, I'm not expecting. I want it without the science behind it. I just want to know, after all of your experience, all of your knowledge, all of your research, all of your books, tell me, do you believe in these things that I'm going to ask you? Do you believe that they're real? Okay?
Okay, I'll a lot of them, they're more nuanced than yes or no, but I'll do my best.
Yeah, and just give me the shortest version you can.
Okay.
Bigfoot.
I don't believe Bigfoot is real. It's possible, but the likelihood of there being a large population of these large unknown animals in North America without leaving any bodies or anything else is pretty remote. So okay. I would never say that Bigfoot doesn't exist. I would just say that the evidence so far doesn't point that way.
Okay, aliens.
Aliens. Yes, I think that aliens do exist. I think that there is other intelligent life somewhere in the universe, but I don't necessarily think that they have, come to Earth and built pyramids and probed hillbillies and
Yeah.
made crop circles.
Okay. And then one last one is psychic ability.
Psychic ability. That's sort of like that one's sort of like Bigfoot. I mean, it's a case where there's lots of people who've claimed it. I've investigated many cases in which it was pretty clearly not psychic ability.
Yeah.
So I would say probably not, but it's possible. I'm open to better evidence.
Sure. Now, I got to say this. Your entire talk today kind of backs up how we approach our work that we do in the metaphysical and the paranormal. And it's like, it's probably something there, but we need to investigate it, and we each need to learn about it for ourselves and find out and look at it from a reality-based form.
Absolutely.
So I really appreciate talking with you today. I want to tell people how to get a hold of you. Hold on a second.
It's funny you should mention that. I was actually in Point Pleasant, West Virginia, just 1 week ago today for a German TV show investigating Mothman.
Oh, cool!
Oh, wow!
I was actually just last weekend. I was on a TV shoot looking into Mothman.
Do we have any proof?
No, and well, it's interesting when you go back and you look at the original eyewitnesses. A lot of them described basically large birds. They talk about wings and beaks and eyes and things like that. And it's sort of like the Roswell story, where the longer away it is, the more dramatic and embellished the stories are.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why, for example, today you see these really sort of muscular, big, weird-looking, gargoyle-looking Mothmen. But if you go back to the original eyewitnesses in 1966, 67, that's not what they're describing. They're describing, in many cases,
a bird.
They say, I saw a bird. So the question is it some unusual bird? Was it some mutant thing? I mean, whatever's going on there. So,
or a pterodactyl or something?
Yeah, I mean, who knows? But anyway, I'm actually still working on that right now. So yeah, I mean, I people can find me. I'm on Twitter at BT Radford. I'm on Facebook. I have different blogs and this and that. As you mentioned, I'm on TV now and then. So I also have a podcast called Squaring the Strange with me and another co-host, and it's a twice a month podcast. We sort of talk about the issues of the day, and we sort of go in depth into some of the investigations. So you can find me at Squaring the Strange and social media and elsewhere. And I appreciate getting a chance to talk to you all. I think that too often in today's world, we tend to block out people who we assume we won't agree with.
Yeah.
Or
people who so true.
Right. We just you're a believer, or you're a non-believer, or you're this, you're that, and I'm not going to have anything to do with you.
Yeah.
And I'm always saying no. I have really good friends who we disagree on a couple things, but that doesn't mean that I don't like and respect them. It just means that
exactly.
And so we often learn more about ourselves from talking to other people who we disagree with.
Mm-hmm. You're right.
Yes, and we got to give your website too. It's Benjamin Radford, RADFORD, BenjaminRadford.com, and
me.
That's you.
We got to talk to him again.
Yes, we may have to have you on some specifics, more specifics in the near future. Okay, great.
Absolutely.
We should have
talk about
test you for psychic.
We could.
We could talk about psychic detectives, and in fact, to be honest with you, I'm actually just before you called, I was working on an article about Teresa Caputo, the Long Island psychic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't want to give any spoilers, but I'm a little skeptical.
Okay.
Well, whatever.
Yeah. Okay. That's cool. That's cool. Well, again,
I'll give you my opinion.
Fair enough.
Thank you, Benjamin, for talking with us. It's been a real pleasure, an eye-opener, and you've passed a lot of information to people and maybe helped them look at things in a better way or the correct way.
Exactly.
Well, I hope so. Thanks for having me on.
Well, thank you so much. I really enjoyed this.
Thank you, and we'll talk again soon.
Yes, let's do it.
All right. Thanks. Bye-bye. Wow, that was an amazing interview. I
It
like
was.
that.
I could talk forever on this stuff.
That was great. Hey, we've got just a few minutes left. Like I said, we skipped all of
Yeah.
our commercials for the rest of the show,
well, except
so-
for Ginger.
except for Ginger.
Yeah,
well, we
say
did
something.
Ginger.
Well, we did?
Yeah,
Well,
That was
isn't
the
she
first
having
ones.
a special thing on this weekend?
yes, and we'll talk about that.
Okay.
But we have to do that one certain time of the week, Eric, where it's time for what?
Here we go. It's Sharon's Joke of the Week.
Oh, we can't forget
All
that.
right, lay
If
it on
Benjamin's
us.
still listening, this is for him.
That was an awesome interview. I like him.
Okay, so what turkey, Eric? What does the turkey dance do on Thanksgiving?
What does
what does the turkey dance to on Thanksgiving? I'll get it out.
what does the turkey dance to?
Uh-huh.
So like the song?
Uh-huh.
I would guess Turkey in the Straw.
Turkey trot. All righty. What do you call a turkey without feathers?
Dinner.
Dead.
Turkey dinner, that's right. All righty then. Okay. I got only one more to go. You ready for this?
Yep.
I'm not very photogenic. Of course, if people on the streaming can see that, they'll understand that statement. But I'm really not very photogenic because every time we get together to take a picture, and everybody says smile or cheese, I go, where?
Oh, okay.
Who doesn't like cheese?
Yes.
That was a cheesy joke.
It
That
was very cheesy. Yes.
I'm sorry. I couldn't resist.
That's all right.
Okay. We're going to
We
move.
enjoy cheesy jokes on this show.
You want a groaner?
Okay, give us
Okay.
a quick
Oh, that
Here's-
groaner.
wasn't
here's a
the groaner?
Here's a
All
groaner.
right.
I burnt my Hawaiian pizza today.
You what?
I burnt my Hawaiian pizza today.
Uh-huh.
Uh-huh.
Seared pineapple.
Well, I should have cooked it on a lower temperature.
Aloha.
Oh, boy.
God. All right, we're moving right into Skip's Corner here with
Alrighty.
my questions. I'm going to try to stump Eric and Sharon. We should have kept Benjamin on and tried to stump